Today I'm speaking with Erik Guthrie, curator of the Laser Tag Museum in Louisville, Kentucky, to learn a bit about the museum and also his take on the past, present, and future of the laser tag industry. Erik, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Now, maybe you could begin by sharing a bit of your own background within the laser tag industry.
Certainly. I currently am the curator of the Laser Tag Museum, and I've been in the laser tag industry for about 20 years now, having started out as a player, hardcore, aggressive player at a QZAR in Toledo, Ohio, and ultimately went into management, eventually developed something called the International Laser Tag Association, and then became vice president of Zone Laser Tag, and then developed the Laser Tag Museum. So I'm a classic overachiever.
Well, that's fantastic, and it sounds like you'll have a lot of background for me here. Now, how would you describe laser tag to somebody who is just completely unfamiliar with it? And how would you maybe address all the facets from arena to tactical and mobile and the home games? There's a lot of elements to laser tag. How would you describe it?
Well, I mean, I'd start with describing laser tag as just a modern version of Duck Duck Goose or Cowboys and Indians, cops and robbers, any traditional game where there are two opposing sides that are trying to tap or recognize the other side. So, if you really look at laser tag, it's just a very electronic version of cops and robbers.
Now, this all began 30 years ago, and in 2014, the 30th anniversary of the beginning of the laser tag industry was commemorated with a celebration of Photon, which is, of course, the granddaddy of all laser tag. What could you tell me maybe about how it all began?
So George Carter, the man who invented photon and is widely credited as the founder of the laser tag industry, got the idea to develop photon while watching Star Wars, the famous Millennium Falcon battle scene, where Luke and Leia and Han Solo are going across the deck of the Death Star trying to get back to the Millennium Falcon. It took him a number of years to go from the time that he watched the movie to where the point where technology caught up for his vision. He built and opened the very first photon laser tag in Dallas, Texas, with a grand opening of March 28, 1984, which we now celebrate as National Laser Tag Day. Since then, laser tag has grown to become a worldwide phenomenon enjoyed by millions every month.
Now, once Photon hit the scene and was very successful, how then did the industry begin to grow and evolve? Could you maybe walk me through some of the early beginnings of laser tag and the systems that developed?
Well, certainly. So when George had developed Photon, he had developed the business model of franchising. There were a number of inquiries, and he sold a number of franchises throughout the United States, Canada, and even into Japan. But he had received thousands of inquiries from all over the world, and many couldn't afford Photon franchise. The media attention to laser tag was so enormous that it sparked a lot of inventors to work on developing a version of laser tag in their garage or in their basement. And those laser tag systems often went on to help grow the industry.
How quickly did that all really start to materialize?
Within months, like every great idea, there was a simultaneous development. George had opened Photon in March of 1984. And in September of 1984, in Chicago, Illinois, a gentleman had developed a laser tag system really unaware of Photon's development and had just heard of laser tag as he opened his own business called Laser Zone. And then the next year, there was another laser tag manufacturer on the scene and so forth and so on. So it grew pretty rapidly from 1984 to by the mid 90s, there were over 30 or so laser tag manufacturers worldwide.
And was it a case of great minds thinking alike, do you think, or just following what was clearly going to be a successful trend?
A fad. It was neither, to be honest. There was neither great mind thinking alike or a successful trend. Even George Carter felt that laser tag was in essence a fad, and it was to capitalize on the fad. You have to put that concept into the perception of the mid '80s. Mood rings. The rock, the Rubik's cube. These were all fads. The '80s were very known for their fad trends, and laser tag in essence was conceived as almost to be a fad. What struck everybody, however, was that laser tag was not a fad and has shown incredible staying power.
Now, being the pioneer with this industry with Photon, he kind of had to start from scratch and come up with some of these concepts. Could you maybe describe a little bit of the reverse IR and how sending and receiving signals may vary by system?
Well, certainly. So reverse IR, meaning reverse infrared technology, simply means that the hack emits an infrared signal and the phaser is the receiving device. And so therefore Photon had the ability to lock on, so to speak, and tag other players because the phaser received that signal. Over time, there's been 3 other technology streams that have developed, with reverse IR becoming a minority technology stream. Forward IR is now the industry standard. It's less draining on the batteries. It allows more accurate data transmission. There's also fiber optic, where the data transmits on the laser beam itself and received by fiber optic panels on the vest. And then there's photovoltaic, which is simply a light source, and the receivers simply pick up on the light source itself. Think flashlight tag for lack of a better analogy. So those 4 technology streams still exist in this laser tag industry, but reverse IR was the first one.
Well, it certainly took off right away, and whether it was designed as a fad or conceived in such a way, it certainly grew quickly. And how large of an industry would you say it was at its height? And when would you say the height of laser tag was?
Today, this moment, at this very second, it's the largest the laser tag industry has ever been. There are over 2,000 laser tag attractions in existence at this moment, and that's the most that has ever happened in the 30-year history.
That's fantastic. So anybody who thinks that it's past tense really needs to give a second think.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of industry analysts and family entertainment center analysts and so forth that have looked at the laser tag, and just in North America alone feel that there's room for another 500 to 1,000 laser tag attractions just in North America, which means that there's probably room for another 3,000 to 5,000 worldwide.
Now, do you think it's fair to call laser tag a sport?
So I wrestle with this question because one has to look at the definition of a sport before one can call it a sport. And while it is popular among the enthusiasts to call it a sport, the problem is that any sport generally has a unified structure of rules and environment. So college football and professional football have different sets of rules, but all football fields are the same size and shape. And unfortunately, laser tag has not standardized to that degree. Laser tag arenas are not uniform in size and shape throughout the nation or the world. So that argument or that position is difficult to say, oh, it's a sport. The flip side of that, though, is that there is an organized tournament scene. There is an organized player movement. There is a organized set of rules. Even though the arenas may not be unified, the rule structures are unified and the movement is very much there. So I'm not one to say it's a sport, but then again, I'm not one to say it's not a sport. You know, I'm just don't have an answer just because it doesn't quite fit, but it's really close.
Well, do you think that competitive laser tag is a growing facet or more of a niche hobby for those who play more seriously?
You know, I would say today that it's more of a niche hobby for those that play seriously in the business model. I mean, if you just look at the percentage of revenue generated by laser tag attractions throughout the United States and around the world, you know, the competitive player does not contribute a substantial revenue stream. So seriously, certainly not enough to sustain or support the business model. And that is not against the player. It's just the investment. Laser tag today, the cost of the equipment, the arena, the second level play field, rent, labor, and so forth. You're looking at, you know, $110 to, $500,000 investment. And there's just not enough of a competitive market scene, just as there isn't that casual field where you and your buddies can get together and say, let's go play football, and you can go rent an entire football stadium. So the industry needs the casual player. It needs the birthday parties. It needs the groups business. It needs the corporate business. So it's really difficult because that's where the money's at. So that's where the operators are putting their focus on. However, the competitive market scene is thriving. We see the world championships for Lasertron that had taken place in the past. We see world championships for Laser Force and for Zone Laser Tag. We see this the Armageddon series, which I'm a huge fan of. We see this current of competitive play, not only stateside, but throughout the world.
Well, now I'm looking forward to participating in my very first Armageddon this year. What are some of the other best known events for competitive players who do want to treat laser tag a little bit more like a sport?
Well, the Armageddon is the holy grail. Obviously the first step is to get involved with leagues or tournaments at your local laser tag facility. And if the facility doesn't have leagues and tournaments, to approach the management and the owners to see what one can do to get leagues and tournaments started, chat with the various laser tag manufacturers. Zone Laser Tag, for example, has an entire 99-page book on leagues and tournaments and has an active league and tournament scene. So you want to kind of get involved with the local laser tag facility first. For those who are unfamiliar, since we've referenced Armageddon, Armageddon is a multi-system tournament. Every laser tag player has generally a home field or a home facility, and therefore they have an advantage on that particular system housed at that facility. What Armageddon has done is created a multi-system tournament where players can come together and play on a variety of different laser tag systems, and they've created their own handicapping, scoring, and evaluation to give all the players an even and fair chance to become the best laser tag team in the world.
Well, it certainly seems like that's a way to really challenge yourself across all of the bases and all of the different systems. And you call that the Holy Grail. That's the biggie, right?
It is. It's very much Armageddon is the Holy Grail. Is as if you win that, you are not only really good at the system that you play on routinely, but also other laser tag systems that you may not have the advantage to play on. And the organizer for Armageddon, Mr. Ricky Vega, has also been able to create Armageddon UK. So there's an entire United Kingdom Armageddon tournament scene, and the Armageddon Russia event just took place a couple of weeks ago. So players from all over Russia and the former CIS countries get together to play a multi-system tournament. So we're very impressed on how international that the tournament play has become.
Now, going back to, we're talking about competitive level here, but also when it comes time to really make the bread and butter, you were talking birthday parties and kind of a younger audience. Who would you say was originally the target audience for this sport, or who is it then and now?
There's no question that the original audience for Photon, when it was developed, was, let's call it young adults, the 15 and up crowd, 15 to 25, 15 to 30-year-old young adult market. That's where Photon was focused at. In part, the technology was heavy. We're talking 1984, a Photon vest, well, we wouldn't call it a vest, but the pod, the battery belt, and the helmet weighed on average of around 11 pounds combined. So it wasn't for the faint of heart, and it wasn't for the small of build. So therefore, it generally was healthy, young adults, both male and females, from the ages of about 15 to 25 was really the target audience for Photon.
Now, I want to ask you a little bit about, do you perceive the industry as having an identity crisis between where it appeals to young children, its competitive appeal for teens and adults, but also specific to Photon? I'd like to ask if you feel like there is an identity crisis there, because certainly it began in that way, and then the marketing shifted to the television show and to some licensed merchandise and such that appealed more towards younger kids. What do you think was the rationale, or were they going after a younger audience at some point?
I've spoken with George Carter many times on this very topic, and George feels that the television show ultimately was probably a mistake. The idea of merchandising, the idea of a broad syndication to make people aware of a Photon on a mass level had, of course, enormous appeal to the young inventor when he created Photon and was given this opportunity to have a television show made, after the sport he had created. So, you can't blame them, but the problem is that the television show ultimately skewed laser tag to a younger audience, which then created a conflict with the older crowd. The older adults, let's call it the older teens and young adults, didn't want to be in a facility with a bunch of kids, and conversely, the parents of the kids didn't want their kids in a facility with a bunch of older teenagers and early 20 somethings. So yeah, an identity crisis is a really good way to describe it. And I think today the industry now knows how to handle and market to the wide range of birthday parties in the earlier part of the day, and groups, youth groups, scout groups, church groups, and so forth in the late afternoon, and then working with young adults, in the evening. So I think today we now know how to how to process the wide range and appeal that laser tag has. I don't think they understood that in 1985.
All right, very well put. And it seems like a balance has perhaps been struck at this point.
I would agree. Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Well, shifting gears a bit, would you tell me a little bit about the Laser Tag Museum? Where is it located and how did it begin?
Yeah, so the Laser Tag Museum is located in Louisville, Kentucky, at a laser tag facility called Laser Blaze. The Laser Tag Museum is a free admission museum. There is no revenue generated by the museum for people to go and see the collection of artifacts that are now on display. I'm the first one to joke that the word museum may be a little generous. It is 4 very large custom-built display cases that house the history of the industry. It originated as really just a collection of items that I'd accumulated in my travels and talking to people, and it was mostly production run laser tag packs, a used QZR pack here, an old Laser Storm pack here. But today, it now houses the rarest of the rare artifacts in the industry.
And you have quite a number of them online that are very cool to see. What are some of the systems that used to be played previously in the history of laser tag and are no longer around? And how many of them would you say are represented at the museum?
Wow, 2 great questions. So if I may, let me split them in half. So how many systems have been in existence? I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60, all total. I would say represented in the museum, I would say probably 35. I actually keep a hit list on my desk of basically, I'm actually walking to it right now, of the equipment we do not have represented. We have, actually, according to this list, we have 34 on display. 34 different systems are represented on display. 24 are not. Now, this list has not been updated. We recently had a very dedicated player by the code name of Aztec, who went to the Russian Armageddon and who had returned back with 3 different laser tag systems, which we have not had on display. So I would say now I'm down to about 21 systems that I don't have represented in the museum, and I would say I'm up to 37 that I do have represented in the museum.
Wow. What happened to all these systems from the past?
Some of them were, flash in the pans. They were localized laser tag, and meaning that, an inventor had developed laser tag in their given market and with the hopes of selling multiple systems, and maybe that did not happen and they only sold 1 or 2 locations. Hollows is a really good example of that. They only had 3 locations. Space or Fun is another example. They had 1 location in Salt Lake City. There are others, though, that were in it only for the business. Laser Chaser had upwards of about 80 locations all total worldwide, but at a certain point, the market no longer sustained that product. The customers were no longer buying Laser Chaser, and the owner sold out to Laser Max and walked away. So there are, like any industry, there's lots of reasons people came into the business, and there's reasons why people exited the business. And that's the purpose of the museum, is to record and show people all the different laser tag systems that people don't even realize existed at one point or another.
Now, how many systems would you say are currently actively in use today?
That's a good question. I would say probably 12. 12 is a good number. There's really, you've got your big 6 laser tag manufacturers in the United States, and then over in Europe you have about another 3 or 4, and then worldwide there's a couple of independent companies that are there's one in India, for example. There's one only in China that only sells in China. So I would say 12 to 14 active manufacturers worldwide, though they may not be selling on a worldwide basis.
Very interesting. Now, going back to something you were talking about in the very beginning, what was the ILTA? What would you say was its function?
So the ILTA was created by a group of operators, including myself, in 1996. The industry was very much an outlaw industry. It was questionable in character. A lot of manufacturers were just in it for the buck. They weren't providing good service and support to the operators. And it was a kind of a wild, wild west feel. And so a number of operators and myself developed the ILTA, the International Laser Tag Association. It was incorporated as a nonprofit organization in the state of Indiana. And it really represented 4 factions. One, it was to help member manufacturers place laser tag systems. So in other words, it really tried to create a code of ethics and a standardized rule book for the manufacturers to sell and support to their operators, which led into purpose number 2 for the ILTA, which was to help operators become more successful, better marketing, better understanding of management, understanding the demographics, stronger. And that led into item number 3, which was to help build the industry. So it served as a resource and a repository of information for people looking to come into the laser tag industry. There was a vast amount of research on, what was to be successful as far as operation practices, the right ratios for the investments and things like that. And then the last item was to serve as a generalized source of information for the public. At that time, laser tag often was perceived as a hostile event. Parents were afraid that laser tag was going to teach kids to shoot and kill other kids. And the ILTA often was called into the controversy of school shootings to show how the laser tag industry did not facilitate or promote violence.
Now, on the topic of public perception, do you think that there is an impact on the public perception of laser tag when it's seen depicted in TV shows like it's recently been in How I Met Your Mother and 2.5 Men and shows like that?
I think the public is smarter than what the politicians give them credit for. Politicians were the ones who felt that maybe, to a degree, laser tag might lead to violence, school shootings, so forth. But when you really see laser tag on television, on shows like, Castle and How I Met Your Mother and 2.5 Men and, MTV's Wake Brothers or, any number of shows. Disney has had laser tag on several different shows. It's always perceived as family fun, kid friendly, adult friendly. Television and movies have done a good job at depicting laser tag for what it is, which is an enjoyable event for the entire family.
Well, very good. And I guess we could say that since it's become more of a family vein from where it started as being the teens and the adults, and now you're seeing it depicted with kids, maybe that's been a shift in the focus or the perception of what it's all about.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, with that, it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you watch, Disney, or you have a small child who watches Disney and they see laser tag on Kicking It, for example, then they in turn, to them, they say, oh, laser tag is for, small kids or young kids, to go play. And so we definitely see this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that occurs. But conversely, we also recognize that operators are pretty shrewd today, and they want to make money as much as they can. And they recognize that they have to appeal to a diverse audience. So not only do you take care of the birthday parties, but you focus on bar mitzvahs, quinceaneras, any kind of scout groups that come in. And then you also cater to the adults. We see a movement for laser tag attractions to offer alcohol to keep the adult crowd coming in.
Now, besides the change in perception, What else would you say are some of the major changes that have occurred along the way?
That's a really good question, and I recently was involved with a German student doctorate thesis on laser tag technology, and specifically some of the technological innovations that have taken place. So, I would, so I've got like a whole list of answers for that, but it really boils down to as technology has advanced, laser tag has been the beneficiary of such advancements. For example, radios have gotten smaller, stronger, more capable, more clear in their data transmission, and that has helped prevent conflicts in scoring on laser tag equipment. Cell phone vibrators are smaller and stronger, which allows laser tag equipment to vibrate. Cell phones have accelerometers in them. Now laser tag has adopted accelerometers into the laser tag equipment. Gorilla Glass and screens have developed, better visual depiction of laser tag. If you look at old Photon, there was no screens, LCDs or OLED screens on the laser tag equipment. Yet today, most equipment has some form of an OLED on it.
Well, it sounds like the industry really does look forward, but at the same time, you want to look back and remember and commemorate the past, which brings me to how exactly did Laser Tag Day come to be and how has it been recognized?
So National Laser Tag Day was an idea that had been talked about amongst the ILTA members for years, that it should be done, it should be done, it should be done. And the executive directors, in charge, for whatever reason, never got around to doing that. And so on the basis of the museum, I set about to create National Laser Tag Day and selected March 28th, since it was the grand opening of Photon, and our very first National Laser Tag Day was March 28th, 2014, which coincided with the 30th anniversary. We provided for free, we had posters printed up, and we provided them for free to operators all over the world who just simply went to lasertagmuseum.com and filled out the form to receive the posters. But we also went one step further, and we encouraged operators to come up with great marketing ideas to celebrate National Laser Tag Day. And we had dozens and dozens of operators all over the world who created flyers and posters and brochures and put it on their website, all kinds of specials. We had, a couple operators that immediately come to mind that ran, roughly 7-minute games. They played Photon sound files in the arena. They, kind of basically did Photon emulations. And that was a wonderful way to pay homage to the system that had started the industry.
Absolutely. That sounds great. Well, now looking back on the over 30 years of laser tag, starting with the creation of Photon, what are your thoughts about the industry as a whole?
It has never been more vibrant and more healthy than it is today. Like any industry, we have ups and downs. We have markets that crest and collapse. But amazingly, during the economic recession that the United States suffered from 2008 through 2012, certainly a few laser tag businesses went under and they ceased to trade, and that is unfortunate, and because you want them all to succeed. But to a degree, it was also a thinning of the herd. It took out some of the weaker operators that may not have been as viable in their business model as they had hoped or expected. But what remained became a much healthier, stronger industry. And so I see that today, and I see what operators are doing and how well and successful they are. And I think that bodes well, extremely well, for the laser tag industry, and not to ramble mindlessly, but to look at what the manufacturers overall are creating. Lasertron with their pick your power up. Laser Force just recently received a patent on a payment verification process, online scoring, immersive gaming experience. I can't express how exciting the future for laser tag is.
Well, that's fantastic. And what do you expect to be the future of the laser tag industry?
This is another one of those questions that people throw around, and they always like, oh, well, you look at online gaming and you look at, the multi-billion-dollar industry that gaming is, and we need to do something very similar to that. But I think at the end of the day, I think laser tag has the 4 core audience, and the 4 core audience is birthday parties, groups, corporates, young adults. And that's the four core audience. And I think so. I don't see that really changing. It took us 30 years to learn who plays laser tag and how do you make a laser tag business viable and successful. And now that we know that, I don't see that part changing. I see technology adapting. I see online scoring systems. I see Facebook integration or social media integration occurring, both positive for the operator and for the player. I see a much more robust mindset of gaming that does occur today. Many people play some form of video games, and that translates because what is laser tag? Laser tag is a real life video game.
Well, it sounds like a very bright future for the industry ahead. Do you have any final thoughts to share?
I'm always excited that so many people are still learning about laser tag and don't realize the storied history laser tag has enjoyed. Again, I don't want to belay the point. We started out with great intentions by George. For a while there, it got a little murky, but that's because there was a lot of money to be made. So we brought in some nefarious individuals into the industry. And then, in the late 90s, early 2000s, the industry cleaned itself up, got rid of the shaky operators and the shaky manufacturers. And today you see a really quality, robust, healthy industry. So I'm excited to be part of it, and I can't believe I've been in it for 20 years, and I'm actually planning the next 20 years to stay in it and be active and do what I can to preserve the artifacts of the industry.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, how can people find out more about the Laser Tag Museum and also opportunities to play laser tag in their local area?
So the first part, lasertagmuseum.com, www.lasertagmuseum.com. We put everything, every donation, every artifact that has been acquired by the museum goes up on lasertag.com. We operate in complete transparency for anyone who wants to know about the laser tag industry or what the museum has. We keep a virtual museum. Like every museum in the world, we're limited on space, and not all of our collection is on display. I would say roughly 50% of our entire collection is now on display. However, 100% of the collection is available for viewing at www.lasertagmuseum.com, along with a timeline of the laser tag industry, a who's who of the various characters of the laser tag industry, and every manufacturer that we've ever been able to track has some entry on lasertagmuseum.com. The second part is where to play laser tag. I will say I think Google has done a fantastic job at that. So one can just simply go to a search engine and type in where to play laser tag in name of your city, and you'll often find 2 or 3 or 4 results, and that is in part due to Google local search. The various manufacturers, quality manufacturers, will have a listing of all the locations that they supply equipment to listed on their website. And that's actually another good sign of transparency in the industry, is that manufacturers are willing to post that. So it's easy today, I think, for people to find laser tag locations, again, either through, just Googling it or just simply visiting various manufacturers' websites, and they all have some version of where to play or our locations list.
Well, excellent. Well, I hope that a lot of people will go out there and get playing some laser tag and enjoy this sport. It's been tremendous over the last 30 plus years. And Erik, I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me a little bit about the Laser Tag Museum and also the history of the laser tag industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.